And hello there, good afternoon to you from Australia. Good morning to you all back home. And first of all, very well done indeed for getting up or staying up to join us. I know you won't be disappointed. First at Melbourne's Albert Park for the first qualifying hour of F1 2000. Let's say good day to Martin Brundle and Murray Walker.
And here we go then into a new millennium of Formula One at this wonderful location at Melbourne with so many questions to be answered. How is Mika Häkkinen going to go against his teammate David Coulthard? Will Rubens Barrichello in a Ferrari be able to match up to Michael Schumacher? What about the Jordan and Jaguar teams? Arrows is new and doing very well here. Williams with a BMW engine and the new British driver Jenson Button. Well, let's bring you right up to speed and tell you that this morning in the 2 45-minute practice sessions, Michael Schumacher was fastest, as he was yesterday, and that's in spite of that heavy crash that he had yesterday. David Coulthard was second, but McLaren, as you've heard from James Allen, and Jaguar have had problems. Hopefully they've got them solved. How do you see things, Martin?
Well, Michael Schumacher certainly has been very fast when he's been on the racetrack. He did make a mistake yesterday, and in fact, if you look back over his career, he has often flown off the road and into the wall. I think that's because he's on the edge of the grip probably more often than most of them. Telling point for me was earlier in the week, I stood talking to Eddie Irvine. Michael Schumacher came bouncing up in his normal shy and retiring manner and said, "Hey Eddie, you left the team in the wrong year." And that's unlike Michael in many ways. He tends not to put too much pressure on himself. There's already a lot of pressure around the Ferrari team in Italy particularly, and Michael's smart enough to try to play down expectation, but you just can't help notice in the way that he's moving around the place, what he's saying in the press conferences and his whole demeanour. And then on the track itself, Michael has been very fast. Coulthard put in a good performance too. He's been off the road a few times, finding the limits, but only just trundling down the grass. Häkkinen had a very near miss yesterday, nearly a carbon copy of his big accident last year in the last corner. He brilliantly buried the throttle as the car was heading towards the wall and drove away from it and got away with it. The cars, everybody's car, looks particularly tricky around here with regard to turning into some of these faster chicanes. So Michael looking strong. He should be on pole, I think. Maybe he can just creep into the 1:29s. The McLarens look like they're low 130s to mid 130s, and the chasing pack really then I think should be led by the Jordans, but it looks incredibly close in the middle then. It's going to be a big fight, and it seems to me the surprise package of the weekend is the BAR Honda, particularly Villeneuve, Murray.
Yeah, and Arrows, I'm very impressed with them. An entirely new car. They've got the Supertech engine. They've got a massive budget. There's not a very happy man, Jean Alesi, who's left the Sauber team last year to join Prost, the French team. And he certainly seems to have joined it at the wrong time, because they've had all sorts of problems with the Peugeot engine, with the transmission. He got very little track time this morning. Incidentally, earlier on you saw the new BMW Williams in its blue and white livery, and Ralf Schumacher went extremely well this morning, 5th fastest, but Heinz-Harald Frentzen, another German on the grid, is with Louise Goodman.
Third quick this morning, Heinz-Harald, you in good shape for qualifying?
Yeah, better shape than I thought I would. Well, okay, qualifying is not over. Starting now in a second, but the car is better than I thought it is.
Do you think you can stay in the top 3 this afternoon?
Well, I'm trying very hard for it, that's for sure.
But what are your chances?
Well, I don't tell you now, otherwise it would be boring to know.
Frentzen second last year, incidentally, 3rd fastest this morning, just about 0.6 of a second slower than Michael Schumacher. Martin, with all that track time today that both the McLaren drivers, as we look at Mika Salo, lost, Mika Häkkinen and David Coulthard, how will it have affected them? What will they have failed to do this morning?
Well, 3 people lost a lot of track time. One was Jenson, of course, in the Williams, and then the 2 McLaren drivers. Häkkinen hit more badly with that. His car stopped on the way out of the pits in the first session and really just got 3 or 4 laps in at the end. It looked as if he was cruising a bit, but actually what I've since found out is they're busy trying to scrub down their tyres, and I think we're going to see a slightly curious qualifying session. Seems they like to use the tyres a little bit more. They're getting a bit more speed the further they go. Häkkinen then hasn't run on low fuel, hasn't really dialed into the circuit. This circuit, as David said earlier in the show, is used once per year, and takes a little bit of time to rubber in and clean up. So Hakkinen really has got a mountain to climb this afternoon. And he just told me before I came up here that they're changing the setup on his car too. The McLaren looks like it wants to snap into oversteer at the first opportunity. When they hook it up, it's pretty fast. Coulthard did get more running in and seems to be more dialed in than his teammate at the moment. But that Mika is very capable of pulling out that special lap. We say pulling up all three bells, the three sections, hook
attachment so far. He's been out of Formula One for 2 years. He drove for the Stewart team last time he was in Formula One. He's got a lot of experience with Benetton and with Arrows before, and he's just gone quickest so far of only 3 drivers out on the circuit in both the first 2 sectors. So he's going to move up into provisional pole position, but not stay there for very long. We've got 42 minutes left. Just about 18 minutes then have been completed as Jos Verstappen enters the 3rd and last sector of the lap to cross the line, put up a time and move up to the top.
Yeah, it's quite easy to see why the Arrows is fast, actually. It's got a good back end on it. It seems quite supple. He can ride the curbs, ride the bump, and he's certainly been able to apply the power reasonably aggressively on the way out of the corner. He goes fast as on a 33.3, but that will be nowhere near the front row time that's required.
Now, just as a matter of interest, Michael Schumacher this morning was a few hundredths of a second faster than Mika Häkkinen's pole position time last year. But the Saturday morning time last year was also faster than the qualifying time, because the morning times do not count for the grid. So Verstappen quickest, Marc Gené second.
Verstappen sits too low in that car. He'd do well to sit a little bit high. He'll struggle at less open circuits where he needs to pick up the apex a little bit earlier, and certainly for longer. I don't know, Jos is not a short guy by any means, and I don't really know why he chooses to sit so low in the car.
Here's the other Prost, that of Nick Heidfeld, who's making his debut in Formula One, having been a tester for McLaren last year and the year before, and having won the Formula 3000 championship last year. Very, very promising driver, being groomed by Mercedes for future Formula One stardom. He's had a very torrid time in the Prost team so far. He's done his outlap. This is his lap that's going to be a quick one. And they normally go out 4 times for 3 laps each time. And of course, we haven't had any of the really quick men out so far. Heidfeld, Alesi, Gené and Verstappen. Alexander Wurz is out in the Benetton.
So 4 German drivers now in Formula One, including young Heidfeld here. He's a name I think you're going to be hearing in the future for quite a long time. Looks like he's going to have, as you said, Murray, a pretty torrid introduction to Formula One with this team, but I think he's a mature young man, and I think he'll stay the course.
Now, is he going to go quicker than Alesi or not? Yes, indeed he is. Second fastest, 1.5 seconds slower than Verstappen, and that, of course, is a heck of a lot. So, 18 drivers still to go out, to no 17 now, because Wurz, and now Fisichella, his teammate, is out as Heidfeld locks up the right front in the Prost.
Yes, he doesn't run wide. He had the good sense to take his foot off the brake. He missed the apex by 2 or 3 feet, but he certainly didn't bounce across the grass. We must have seen 30 cars go across the grass there in the running through Friday and Saturday morning.
21 minutes gone, 39 minutes to go in this 60-minute qualifying for tomorrow's Australian Grand Prix, the first of the year.
Yeah, and it's reasonably clear to see the problem with that car too. And the back end is dancing all over the place. They're driving the car on the way into the corner. That's before they start turning the steering wheel. So to actually get the car into the apex. So that looks quite, look at the way he's having to work on the steering wheel through there. And you think, wow, nobody in the world could drive this car faster than I am. This is supersonic fast. But actually all of your work is going into keeping the thing in the right place on the racetrack and not moving forward and getting a faster lap time.
And in Britain you are soon going to see Jenson Button in the Formula One BMW Williams, because he is out on the track, as Alexander Wurz in the Benetton Playlife engine puts up a couple of very quick sectors. He's going to move up into provisional pole position with 38 minutes to go.
Yes, some people at Benetton think that their new car is exceptionally good, so and that's good. I'm pleased to hear that. There's Jenson Button. Now, some people think I've been critical of Jenson in some things I've said, but in fact I've been exactly the opposite, Murray. The kid has got enormous talent, there's no doubt about that, and I've expressed the view that that talent needs to be nurtured and developed in a way and brought into the sport at the right time. And I've been at the sharp end of Formula One, or in amongst the action, for about 18 years now, and my instincts tell me that it's just a little bit too early for Jenson. Now, his father and his managers must have had a terrible decision to make in a way, and I didn't envy him that. With an opportunity to join Williams, it's not easy to turn it down. I'm hoping my instincts will be wrong as the year goes on, but I really think that the spotlight that's going to be on him and the limited experience that he's got means it's going to be so difficult with a year of Formula Ford, a year of Formula 3, and I came straight out of Formula 3 into Formula 1 with Senna. I was 20, we were both 24 years old, and really I'm just hoping he doesn't make the same mistake that I did and think this is easy. I was 5th in my first race, 2nd a few races later. I thought it was so straightforward.
You thought it was a doddle,
and I went in the wall and hurt myself that pretty much affected the rest of my career. And a couple of things Jenson said just bothered me a little bit. He slowed down, and of course he's got some kind of problem there, but he said, I'm completely ready for Formula 1. He cannot know that. He doesn't know what's involved. And he's also said, the cars are just a little bit faster. It's no problem. And that is the problem. The cars have got wider, stickier tyres. With fuel on board, they're a lot heavier, and they are a lot faster, and you have to give them some respect. But Jenson at the moment is showing his skills, but also showing his lack of experience.
And his teammate Ralf Schumacher is now fastest. Ralf Schumacher in the BMW Williams is number 1 with 36 minutes to go. 1 minute 32.2. Now that is about 6/10 of a second. There he is. That's about 6/10 of a second slower than he went this morning. So he's probably got a bit in reserve. But meantime, Jacques Villeneuve is just 9/100ths of a second slower. The order at the present moment, after 13.5 minutes, Schumacher fastest, Villeneuve second in the BAR, De La Rosa third in the Arrows, with Fisichella that you've just seen on your screens 4th fastest. Verstappen is 5th, so the Arrows are 3rd and 5th. Alexander Wurz is in 6th position. Eddie Irvine is on the track in the Jaguar. Mika Häkkinen is now half a second faster than Jarno Trulli, and the Jordans are definitely the ones to watch.
It's probably Häkkinen's first ever drive in that car on low fuel. He didn't get to run this morning like that. I don't think they tested on low fuel. If they did, they didn't show their lap times. But I think it's going to be touch and go between Frentzen and Häkkinen. Frentzen was about a 10th up at halfway through the lap. Coulthard too now on a very fast lap. But Schumacher is up and running too.
Yeah, Michael Schumacher has just done the first under 30 seconds first sector. We've got another new pole man coming up, but I think David Coulthard is about to take the pole position from Mika Häkkinen. There he is, there are the times. Coulthard on the right, Häkkinen on the left, and no, he fails by just 0.4 of a second. But meantime, Michael Schumacher has really got his foot down. He's into the third and last sector. This is him completing the lap. I remind you, last year, Häkkinen and Coulthard on the front row of the grid.
Michael Schumacher was slow in the middle part of this lap. He has tended to be the fastest at the end. If he does pip Häkkinen, I don't think it'll be by much. He's coming over the line. It's a long way down the pit straight. In fact, he doesn't make it. He lost time in the middle of the lap. We didn't see where or why, but it wasn't a particularly great lap from Michael Schumacher.
Another great indication of how good Häkkinen is, Martin. You were saying he can pull it out when he has to. As you rightly pointed out, he hadn't been in that car this morning. He only got a few laps in this morning after the engine problems he had, and he's immediately quickest on the lap. 1/10 of a second faster than the man you are watching, Michael Schumacher, as we look at David Coulthard.
Coulthard is on it too. He's elected to go for 2 flying laps. James told us that he went out on new tyres. Well spotted, James. I think that's critical. And David obviously was playing in those new tyres and has elected probably to go for 3 runs this afternoon and make a second lap. His team should be giving him the information. Stay on it, David. This could and should be a faster lap for David Coulthard. Can he take that provisional pole? It's a long, long way down that pit straight before you trigger the bid. Yes, he does, just.
David Coulthard, 37 thousandths of a second faster than his teammate. So, for the moment, it is McLaren fastest, McLaren second, Ferrari third, Michael Schumacher, Jordan, Frentzen fourth, Jarno Trulli in the Jordan is fifth, Ralf Schumacher in the BMW Williams is sixth, ahead of Villeneuve, Irvine, Sala and De La Rosa. That is the top 10.
Coulthard seems really focused this weekend. He's been driving very, very nicely, but I've still got a sneaky suspicion that Ferrari ultimately is faster around here, which is quite key, actually. The last couple of seasons, Ferrari have really been a long way behind McLaren on this racetrack, and then as we've gone on to Brazil and into the European season, they've tended to look better. If already they seem like they might have the edge.
Michael Schumacher always tells it like it is. If he says something's going to happen, it almost invariably does. And as you said earlier on, he's been very, very confident in the run-up to Australia about the new car, saying how good it is. Ross Brawn, the technical director, has been saying exactly the same thing. Rory Byrne, their designer, seems to have done a cracking job. But they're up against possibly the best in the business, Adrian Newey, the man who's designed this car, the McLaren. It's got a new Mercedes-Benz made by Ilmor at Brixworth V10 engine in it, entirely new with a very distinctive note. It's producing a lot of horsepower, and there we are. You see, Mika Häkkinen is 23 thousandths of a second inside Coulthard's time at that point. It's a battle between the McLarens, and Michael Schumacher will be out again soon.
Jenson Button's about to complete his first ever lap of qualifying in Formula One. Let's see where he comes over the line. He's a few seconds away, but you're watching Mika Häkkinen, and this could, if he can get good drive through the last corner, bit of a bogey corner this for Häkkinen. Oh, and this car's well out of shape in the middle. Can he nick pole from David Coulthard?
Well, at the
he does, Murray.
Yep.
A quarter of a second faster, Häkkinen on that provisional pole.
So that is the fourth really quick man who's been in pole position this day.
Unfortunately, Jenson Button had to pit at the end of that lap, so he didn't manage. The pit lane obviously is on the way, the entry to it is on the way into the last corner, and he took to that. He's clearly still not happy with that Williams.
No, and he hasn't qualified either, and nor has Rubens Barrichello, who will do, of course. But I remind you again that you only get to take part in the race if your fastest lap in qualifying is within 100% of the 107% of the fastest lap, which is currently that of Mika Häkkinen. Jenson Button has yet to qualify.
Yes, just roughly guessing where I think Jenson would have come in about 12th or 13th, judging his first 2 section times. But what an awful lot of pressure for him now. Just 25 minutes to go. No lap time on the board, and now he's really going to have to pull everything out of the bag that he's got for his tender 20 years.
Very calm and phlegmatic young man. I've little doubt that he'll be able to do it, because he got his place in the Williams team in a shootout with the Brazilian Bruno Junqueira, who had a lot more experience in Formula 3000, which Button had never been in, than did Jenson, and Jenson won. So in comes Mika Häkkinen, 25 minutes to go. He is fastest, 0.2 of a second faster than Coulthard, who is 0.2 of a second faster than Schumacher. Frentzen is 0.5 of a second slower than Coulthard, who is second. He's in 4th position, Frentzen. And then Jarno Trulli and Ralf Schumacher complete the top 6. You're leaving Melbourne for a moment, but you'll be back soon. Rubens Barrichello completes another lap. He's in 6th position, but I think Louise has got some news about Jenson Button.
I have, Marion. It's bad news, I'm afraid. Definitely a problem with his race car. The team are being very coy about what it is. They won't say whether it's a mechanical problem, an engine problem. They have said it's nothing to do with the accident this morning, but suffice to say it won't be taking any further part in the session. They've switched the T-car, which was set up for Ralf Schumacher, to Jenson's settings. Done that very quickly. He's actually getting into the car in front of me, so he's definitely having a baptism of fire.
Yeah, and it's a tremendous challenge for him. He's the only man at the present moment who has not qualified, because Gaston, as off goes Heidfeld in the Prost. Gaston Mazzacane, the Argentine driver in the Minardi, has qualified 21st at the present moment. Jenson Button has got a major challenge now, having gone off this morning, going out in a car he hasn't driven after the setup's been changed for Ralf Schumacher. And Ralf Schumacher in the BMW Williams is in 8th position. 21 minutes to go. Häkkinen and Coulthard, as they were last year, are on the front row of the grid at the moment, ahead of Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari.
Yes, a few surprises looking down the field. Eddie Irvine, the top Jaguar man at the moment, in 10th place. Mika Salo in 11th, doing pretty well in the Sauber, but Johnny Herbert down in 19th. So Herbert, although he has posted reasonably competitive times, the Jaguar's just not hooked up at the moment.
Well, Jaguar have got this major oil problem in the engine, and Johnny Herbert had to stop today with plumes of grey smoke pouring out of the back of the car. And it looks as though they're... Just look at the way that Michael Schumacher is on it now. This is the first sector. It's his 6th lap. He's still got another 6 to go. Now, let's see how his time compares with that of pole position holder Mika Häkkinen with 20 minutes to go.
Yes, that's very striking about Michael in that new 2000 Ferrari, is just how aggressively he can put the car, throw the car into the corners. And there you see, yes, he's 300s up already. And Michael really has got supreme confidence to just roll on the steering as soon as he arrives where he wants to turn in. But a little bit of oversteer on that particular occasion, and well, he's not got the advantage over McLaren I was expecting from this morning's times.
No, and it's a circuit, as Tony Jardine was saying earlier on, and he's 3/10 down now, you see. That cost him dear, that slight overstep. It's a circuit where Michael Schumacher has not had good luck. He had to start from the back of the grid when he stalled his engine last year. So it looks to me as though he's still going to stay in 3rd position, notwithstanding that very fast first sector.
He's cruising now anyway, so whether he's just regrouping for another lap or whether he'll come in the pits, we shall see any time now, and it's the pit lane.
Okay, he's coming in, just over 19 minutes to go. This is the order. Mika Häkkinen is fastest, Coulthard is 2nd, Michael Schumacher is 3rd, Heinz-Harald Frentzen is 4th, Trulli is 5th, Barrichello is 6th, and 9/10 of a second covers them. Fisichella in the Benetton is 7th, 1.3 seconds off the pace, followed by Ralf Schumacher 8th. Jacques Villeneuve, the top BAR driver, is 9th. Eddie Irvine in the Jaguar is in 10th position. Into the garage goes Michael Schumacher in the brand new Ferrari. Like all Formula One cars, it's a very pretty motor car. The Jaguar, another one, Eddie Irvine, new helmet design, black with the leaping cat on the back of it. Why did he change his helmet? Well, he said he's always wanted to have a black helmet. He didn't think that the orange and green design that he had last year and the years before suited the colours of the Jaguar, and this was a good time to change.
Yeah, that absolutely amazes me, frankly. I mean, your helmet colours are sacrosanct. You take them through blood, sweat and tears through your motor racing career, and to just suddenly change your helmet colours is very surprising to me, I have to say.
Yeah, funnily enough, Johnny Herbert's done the same thing. He's got a different sort of Union Jack helmet. Lacey's changed his helmet, and Irvine, as you can see, is well down. Just about 17.5 minutes to go now. And I'm beginning to wonder whether Michael Schumacher, who has been pushing very hard, has got enough in reserve. And if Mika Häkkinen takes pole position again, it's going to be the 22nd in his career, but it's perhaps early days to say that, because there's a lot of action to be seen on this circuit yet.
Yes, look, and he's already half a second down, going through turn 6 there, Eddie Irvine, so something's clearly not hooked up with the Jaguar. Maybe they're not enjoying the track surface temperature, which is up at 48 degrees now.
Well, as we expected, the top rows, the front rows, are monopolised by Ferrari, McLaren and Jordan, because McLaren are on the front row at the present moment. Schumacher is on the second row, followed by Frenzen's Jordan and Trulli's Jordan, and then the sixth car is Rubens Barrichello. So it's 2 Ferraris, 2 McLarens, 2 Jordans on the 3 front rows, and then Fisichella's Benetton, followed by Ralf Schumacher's BMW Williams.
Yeah, he's looked his left front. He might just get away with that. He did indeed. But as I said right at the beginning of the show, that Jaguar is not sticking at the back end like it should be at all. This may just move Eddie up to 7th or 8th. Let's have a look. He had a good run at the end of the lap with the looks of it. His time was good in the last sector, but he's still really struggling to... and there's Johnny Look. There's Johnny Look, Murray.
Oh, yeah.
Looks like it's a breakdown.
You know, it is an incredible thing, Martin, but it doesn't matter which team poor Johnny Herbert is with, he always seems to be the one who has the bad luck. Remember with Lotus?
So he's locked his front wheel going in there, so I don't know. He then ends up looking as if he points it into the tyre somewhere, or does he park it? No, it's broken down. Look, and he's
sounding very rough.
Yes, he's parking in. He's going to put it up in. And Button now is in the field. 21st place for Jenson Button, a 1:33.8.
Yeah, and the 107% time is 1:37, so he's in by a comfortable 4 seconds. Well done, Jenson.
I would imagine Villeneuve's just been through the gravel trap somewhere, because he had a big break offline at the end of that straight, and that's normally to clear the gravel out of your radiator ducting. So let's have a look. Let's just see what's happening here. Yes, in fact, he does go through the gravel, look, and he does the old trick at the end of the next straight to get the gravel out by jumping on the brake pedal, and being the considerate man that he is, he did it offline. James is in the pits.
Yeah, Martin, it's the rear end of this Ferrari that Michael Schumacher doesn't like, I think. He's changed the rear wing twice, which might sound a pretty radical thing to do in qualifying, but there's pretty serious air of calm in Ferrari. He's also turned the front wing up a couple of notches to compensate for the rear wing change that he's made. He was talking before about balance and how important it was. I think at the feeling here, Ferrari, they just feel they're not really getting the most out of this car. They've got more speed. There's not a lot in it between them and McLaren, but they do feel, as you said earlier in the programme, they have an edge. They've got about 15 minutes to find it.
And Rubens Barrichello is finding it, James. Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
He spins off on what was undoubtedly, I think, going to be a pole position lap, because he'd gone fastest in the first sector, faster than he'd gone in the second sector, but before your very eyes, Rubens loses it, and he stays in 7th place.
Yes, a cracking lap up to that point, and was certainly going to put him ahead of Michael Schumacher, his teammate, but then just overcooked it. He locked the front left on the way in, had to get off the brake pedal, unable to turn the car in, then was carrying too much speed, and the back just got away from him, really. I think maybe the tyres and why drivers are losing the back end of these Formula One cars so much. I think the tyres must have very stiff sidewalls, and as soon as you get a bit of slip angle on them, they're giving up grip, and then you're doomed.
And we've seen it so many times yesterday in the 2 1-hour sessions and the 2 sessions this morning, as we now watch Marc Genet in the Minardi try to improve on 18th position and passing Ralf Schumacher, who's I presume on a snow. He's on his outlap, and he could see that Genet was on a quick one, so he moved over and let him through. And with 12, just under 13 minutes to go, no change at the front. It's looking more and more like, yet again, a McLaren front row. Häkkinen and Coulthard, then Schumacher and Frentzen, Trulli and Irvine, Barrichello 7th, Fisichella 8th, Ralf Schumacher 9th, Villeneuve 10th.
Beg to differ a little bit, Murray. I think it's far from all over, actually. They've both got
Hope you're right.
2 runs to go yet, and we've obviously seen Barrichello currently down in 7th place, capable of going much faster. I think both McLarens have got a bit left, but certainly Michael Schumacher is the man that could make the biggest move if he can hook that car up.
And up goes the track temperature yet more. 49 degrees is the track temperature. Air temperature 31 degrees. It is mighty hot at Melbourne, Australia, as we come into the closing stages of the qualifying session for tomorrow's Australian Grand Prix. And Louise Goodman could tell us something about Jaguar.
Well, I wish I could, Murray. I've been trying to find out if there's an obvious explanation for their lack of pace, but certainly there's nothing that I can see. However, I can tell you that the team have been coming out to the front of the garage and looking up at the sky. So I think you could be right, Martin. I think the problem that they're having is with the temperature. They're just not being able to get the car to work properly as the heat gets up in the track.
Any news about why Johnny Herbert stopped, Louise?
No news on that. He just said, I've stopped, I'm coming back. That's all he said.
Well, the track temperature is going up, and that's bad news now. It's 50 degrees with Michael Schumacher on the circuit. He's done his outlap. He's in the first sector of his quick lap, he hopes. That's the challenge on the left. Mika Häkkinen's first sector time, 1 minute 29.946, with ahead of Schumacher on the grid, Coulthard and Häkkinen.
Schumacher super neat and tidy through 3 and 4, totally committed through 5. Now can he take speed in? And yes, he had. It looked so nice through that early part. Doesn't surprise me at all. He's a fraction up, but it's this middle section, and particularly this turn 9, where he's lost it on the previous 2 runs. He's just got to back off a little bit through there, and again, very neat and tidy, and progressively on the throttle. Michael is on one of his laps.
Now, what about the second sector? He was ahead of Häkkinen on the first, and he is behind him now, just about the same amount as he was ahead in the first sector. So it's all down to the third and last sector, and it's going to be nip and tuck. It's going to be mighty close if he keeps up the pace.
No, he's run wide, Murray. Sorry,
he
he just went in way too fast and ran wide. He's having such an untidy afternoon. What on earth's the matter with Michael?
And Barrichello's had the same problem, of course. They both lost it right on the edge of it. And he slows right down now. No point in cramming on the pace. He knows he's lost the plot.
I would think McLaren are sitting there feeling pleasantly surprised at the moment, given the time that the 30.4 that Michael seemed to effortlessly do this morning. At the moment, he's a full 6/10 slower than that, but this is a pure driving error. Just took too much speed through into the apex and ran wide. All of the teams here are suffering a lot of understeer. They can't get the front tyre to bite. They're then having to set them up unnaturally with a lot of downforce and grip on the front end, and that then makes them dance around at the back. Michael's obviously playing with that balance, but that was a clear case of too fast in and understeer mid-corner.
2000 is a repeat of 1999, because Häkkinen in the morning last year was faster than he was in qualifying in the afternoon. Looks as though it's going to be the same situation here. Michael Schumacher this morning 30.4, Mika Häkkinen just 0.2 of a second slower this afternoon, but in the vital qualifying session the times count, and that's good enough for Mika Häkkinen. 9 minutes to go.
Yes, I think I saw Coulthard back on track now, the current front row sitter in second place. This, of course, is Wirtz in the Benetton. What's he up to? He's 14th at the moment, and that was an outlap. He's completed. So this is a hot lap for Alexander Wirtz, and he's miles off the pace.
Well, they've got plenty of laps, the men at the front, because with 8.5 minutes to go, Häkkönen's done 6 of his 12 laps, Coulthard's done 6 of his 12 laps, Schumacher and Frentzen, 3rd and 4th, have done 7. Jarno Trulli's done half the laps he's entitled to, in 5th position. Eddie Irvine still there in 8th position. And I was saying, Martin, if Eddie Irvine in the Jaguar can hold 6th position, I think he's done extremely well when you consider that he's got 2 McLarens, 2 Ferraris, 2 Jordans against him.
Yes, although he was fighting the car on that lap, we did watch that one, of course, didn't we? He did hook up all 3 sections, and that's put him up into, as you say, 6th position. But Herbert's in trouble back there in 19th. He's got to get back to the pits, jump in the spare car. Just 7 3/4 minutes left to go.
Something of which he has had a great deal of experience in his long career, Johnny Herbert, with his 144th Grand Prix coming up tomorrow.
Now that'll be Schumacher having visited the Weybridge, I would think, and then...
sorry, Martin, to interrupt you, but look at Barrichello. Now, here he is. Rubens Barrichello has gone fastest in the 1st sector. He's in the 2nd sector now. Now, remember, this is the situation on the previous outing for the young Brazilian, and he lost it. He's quicker in the 2nd sector than he has been before. It's going to be very, very close at the top. This is the final sector. Is Rubens Barrichello going to move into pole position for his first drive for Ferrari on his 8th lap?
No, he's rather more cautious. This is the corner he spun on last time. Took a lot of curb on the way and would cost him a bit of time getting on the throttle on the way out. This could just pop him up onto the front row, using all the track and some, coming out of the last corner. Barrichello over the line now, and 4th place.
As we look at Pedro de la Rosa now, let's see how the new Arrows is going. That is Mark. Today losing it into the wall.
Yeah, that's harmless enough, to be honest, but spoil the look of that in a hurry. They may have to red flag the session because of that.
Well, he looks as though he's okay.
So now we've got a full house at the front of McLaren's front row, all Ferrari 2nd row, and an all Jordan 3rd row. I think that's pretty much as we predicted, isn't it?
Down to 7th place.
In terms of the... Yeah, sorry, in terms of the top 6, but as I'll say again, I really thought Schumacher had the legs on that McLaren, but he's got 1 run left to prove whether that's the case or not.
And so, of course, for Mika Häkkinen, he's got 5 laps, and David Coulthard has got 4 laps. As we watch Rubens Barrichello now on his 9th lap, he's got 1 run after this. You can see that at 3.6 seconds, he's backed right off. So 2 Ferraris, 2 McLarens, 2 Jordans in the top 6. Eddie Irvine 7th, Fisichella in the fastest. Benetton is 8th. Mika Salo in the Sauber, the man who drove for Ferrari and BAR last year and had previously driven for Tyrrell and Lotus, is 9th. Ralf Schumacher is where BMW Williams hoped they would be. They said a realistic hope for them would be to be in the top 10, and that's where Schumacher is. Is Villeneuve going to knock him off? He's 11th.
De La Rosa up to 12th place in the Arrows, and well, at the moment James Allen's winning the bet. He said he thought Barrichello would get within a 10th or a 10th and a half of Michael Schumacher, and I thought it wouldn't be quite as close as that, but right now Barrichello is just in fact a fraction under a 10th of a second within Michael Schumacher.
And Villeneuve moves up to 8th place, bumps Fisichella down to 9th, Salo down to 10th, Ralf Schumacher down to 11th, and Pedro de la Rosa in the top Arrows down to 12th position. He's just a whisker ahead of his teammate Jos Verstappen.
Yes, apparently as you're watching Villeneuve finishing that lap, this is a slow-mo replay, of course. The understeer turning into the last corner, and apparently James is in the Ferrari, or looking into the Ferrari pit. They're changing the camber on the front of Michael's car. We saw him understeer clean off the road, and obviously Michael's trying to find a bit more front grip as Häkkinen comes through with quite a good lap, but I'd be surprised if it improves on his current 30.6 unless he's done a stunning end of the lap, and he has. He's the fastest man all day through the last part of the lap and improves by a 10th of a second. He's done a seriously impressive job this afternoon, considering he virtually didn't run the entire day up to the start of qualifying.
Yeah, terrific. That's just a tenth of a second slower than he was last year. But let's look at the back of the grid. Starting 22nd at the moment in his first Grand Prix, Gaston Mazzacane, the Argentine driver in the Minardi, on the same row with Jenson Button. Johnny Herbert down in 20th. Pedro Diniz in the second Sauber is 19th. And just ahead of him is Marc Genet, 18th. Shauna Lacey will be very unhappy, 17th in the Prost. Zonta is ahead of him, but even worse from a Lacey's point of view, his new teammate for his first Grand Prix, Nick Heidfeld, in the second Prost is 15th. 14th is Alexander Wurth, and then the two arrows, as I've said, Verstappen 13th, Pedro de la Rosa is 12th, Ralf Schumacher is 11th, and now we can concentrate again on the top 10 as we look at the flying Mika Häkkinen. That lap he's just done has put him a comfortable 0.3 of a second ahead of David Coulthard. David Coulthard knows, and there he is, that he's got to raise his game. For whatever reason last year he was put down by Mika Häkkinen, and David means to win the World Championship just as much as Mika Häkkinen does.
Yes, I think David caught traffic at the end of that last lap. It was a reasonably tidy lap, and he's still got some laps in his pocket to run really till the end. 2 minutes 20 seconds left. He can run completely to the end. In fact, he's hit traffic on the first part of this lap too, 1.3 seconds down. So David not having a spectacular afternoon. But it's Michael Schumacher that's had the tatty laps and really wasted his opportunities. And
Zonta.
That was not for the first time this weekend. Zonta, who really, despite testing well over the winter and looking like he's finding some kind of speed and stability, really has looked like he's one step behind this car all through the weekend so far.
And Michael Schumacher is out on the track with 1 minute and 45 seconds to go as Zonta spins off into the gravel trap. Now or never for double world champion Michael Schumacher against double world champion for McLaren Mika Häkkinen. There is the proof. That is Michael Schumacher. He's got plenty of time to get round to the start and finish point to start his final lap. It will be his 10th lap of the afternoon, and it's the one that's going to count. Ferrari have got to be closer to McLaren after the Australian Grand Prix than they have been in the recent past, because that was where they were losing points in the early part of the season, as Martin was saying.
Yes, as you can see, that's the seconds to go now. Doesn't matter, as long as you cross that line before the checkered flag comes out, you can complete that lap. So Michael Schumacher really has one flying lap now to get the job done. And any traffic or any mistakes like we've seen from him on the other three attempts, and he will stay nailed on the second row of the grid.
Over the line then with Michael Schumacher on the lap that has to count, with half a minute still to go before the flag goes out. Down to turn 1, the right-hander. Turn 2, the left-hander, 130 miles an hour. Up into 6th gear and 180 miles an hour for turn 3, where he backs off down to 2nd gear, 55 miles an hour. Now he's making his way up towards the top part of the circuit. Look at that split time on the left. Mika Häkkinen, 30.035 seconds. We'll know very shortly whether Michael Schumacher's got a chance. Oh, that's Coulthard, and Schumacher is 2/10 in, but is he going to, are the yellow flags going to go out?
For sure. Coulthard's car, a few flames underneath the engine cover. They look like they're still flickering away. So for sure there'll be a lot of waved yellows. Marshall's on the track, of course, so double waved yellows for the other drivers, and that means that will spoil Michael Schumacher's lap. And he was actually up on the fastest man in the first section was Schumacher, but surely he will have to. Oh, look, the rear wing.
Very lucky it didn't hit his head.
Absolutely bouncing. They don't weigh that much, fortunately, but bouncing. And this is a corner where Coulthard spun actually on Friday morning with the back end of the car snapping away. Watch the rear wing come down now, bouncing on the edge of the cockpit. Session stop. So that's it. That means it's over. They won't restart. There's not enough seconds for anybody to get back around and take and start a flying lap.
Very tough luck for Michael Schumacher there. He was not only fastest in the first sector, but he was faster than he had been before in the second sector. Just 2/10 off Michael Schumacher's time in that second sector, and it would have been a very close run thing indeed. But that is history. I say would have been because it's in the past. The qualifying for the Australian Grand Prix of the year 2000 has been completed, and Mika Häkkinen has taken pole position yet again.
There's a suspension failure there on Verstappen's car. Look, it looks to me like the pull rod has broken. They're flapping around on the inside there and just let the wheel go. So fairly serious error there. I don't know whether he's knocked it against something, but Coulthard clearly uninjured. And here he comes now. And look, the back end getting away from him, actually on the way into the corner, buries the throttle, but that car is only going to go one place from there, and that's into the wall.
So it is indeed a repeat of last year's grid for Australia, with Mika Häkkinen taking pole position for the 22nd time in his career. The first time this year, of course. David Coulthard again starts alongside him on the front row of the grid. A great typical drive by the Finn, who's shown that when the chips are down, he can pull something very special out of the bag. The two Ferraris, third and fourth, Schumacher and Barrichello, half a second slower than Mika Häkkinen. Then the two Jordans of Frentzen and Trulli, fifth and sixth. Eddie Irvine starts Jaguar's first Grand Prix in 7th position ahead of Jacques Villeneuve. And the fifth row is Giancarlo Fisichella and Mika Salo.
Well, that's a great job from the double world champion this afternoon, and that will take a bit of spring out of the step of Michael Schumacher, because he surely has had one of his least impressive qualifyings ever, albeit in third place. So Michael untidy, Mika keeping it all together, and that, I think, sends a pretty strong signal out to Michael of Mika's intentions for the season ahead.
Yes, and Ralf Schumacher starts 11th ahead of Pedro de la Rosa. The second Arrows is in 13th place, driven by Jos Verstappen. Alexander Wurz 14th in the Benetton, with Nick Heidfeld, the top Prost driver for his first Grand Prix, 15th. And just to complete the others, Zonta 16th, Alesi 17, Genet 18, Pedro Diniz 19. Johnny Herbert and Jenson Button start in the Jaguar and Williams respectively, 20th and 21st. And you can't actually see Button's name, but it'll come up in a minute, followed by Gaston Mazzacane in the Minardi, 22nd.
Yes, that doesn't represent Button's abilities or potential at all. Clearly didn't get a clean run at it at all today. Nightmare scenario for him.
That's it then, Mika Häkkinen pole position. We're going to a break.
And you are back with us at Albert Park, Melbourne. Häkkinen, Coulthard and Michael Schumacher, the 1, 2, 3 here after qualifying. The third year running, by the way. They've finished the qualifying hour in that order. Let's have a word with Tony Jardine. Now, Coulthard, he'll be happy to be up there on the front row, but worried surely by that very nasty accident right at the end of the session.
Yeah, very nasty accident indeed. I mean, this is the new David Coulthard, no more Mr. Nice Guy, and he is going for it, and we've seen him going for it today. And he means to start off from the front, which he's doing, but he wanted pole position. He obviously went that little bit too hard. The other interesting thing is that McLaren just having the edge on Ferrari, everyone expecting Ferrari to take that pole. Schumacher hasn't done it. And David Coulthard was very nearly there, but, you know, he's in the wall. He'll be having discussions only with Ron Dennis now.
Great credit to McLaren, the way that they changed those engines and got things together in time for the qualifying hour. But is it a case of first day back at school for David Coulthard? He's not the only one who's made errors.
No, all sorts of people have been going off all over the place. The track is dirty, they're new cars, they're skittish. And look at this as David Coulthard goes off, and you can see there has been a new side impact test. The wing comes down his head as well, and new frontal impact tests, increased loading on the safety of the chassis of the car. This has all been proved. There is a new carbon fibre plate which runs alongside the fuel tank and alongside the side of the driver. So he's quite safe in there, but I'm sure David will be very, very upset by that, because he is a good outside bet for the championship. McLaren done a great job.
He's 5-1 with some of the bookmakers in the park here to win this race, but fortunately it didn't actually come down on his head. It was just in front of him, wasn't it? How about Jenson Button, though? What did you make of his baptism to F1 qualifying?
Well, I think he's coped extremely well, and the motto is really, if you're fast enough, you're good enough. And Frank Williams and Gerhard Berger have clearly spotted some talent here, but he had to, after that crash this morning, go out in the spare car. and there were some further problems with his race car. Came in, took the spare, and just in the last few moments he got it onto the grid. But that's huge pressure on a 20-year-old. Barrichello started at 20, but he'd already done Formula 3000. He'd already won the British Formula 3 Championship.
But at least he's there. At least he's on the starting grid for the Australian Grand Prix. Let's have a word with James Robinson, shall we? He is the Williams chief engineer, talking here, of course, about Jenson Button.
James Robinson, chief engineer at Williams. Your thoughts on Jenson's first qualifying session?
Well, very fraught, as you saw from the television. Obviously had to use two cars. Big problem with the first car, so I had to get into the spare car. So not a session we want to repeat.
What was the problem with his race car? Was it something to do with the accident this morning?
No, well, it may be related, we have to check, but basically fuel pickup problems on both those first two runs. So we increased the fuel level for the second one, but that didn't solve the problem.
And he couldn't seem to get the time from the T car either. Is there an obvious explanation?
The T car had suspension settings for Ralph, so obviously not used to driving that car. So very difficult to jump into it and get a time out of it.
To be on pole position.
Let's go. And now McLaren, they'll be working on that air conditioning in time for tomorrow. You've always got to worry about Michael Schumacher. When he says he is confident, that's when he's very, very dangerous. But one thing about Michael Schumacher, he never sweats. And it's approaching 125 degrees in old money out there. We're nice and cool in here, aren't we? What about the McLaren's front row of the grid, though? Looking good.
Well, it's tremendous for Häkkinen because he's the first sort of over two pole winners. It's only Senna who's had that sort of multi-pole winning, and here he is. This is David Coulthard because he stole pole position early on. He had the provisional pole position, driving very well indeed. And he only finished one race out of the first four last year, so he had a lousy start. So let's hope that they fix his car. Here's Mika Häkkinen. He responded very quickly, as he said in the press conference, a car that had been very hurriedly set up. But this is a man that's been transformed over the winter with a long, long break. He was destroyed in Malaysia. He admitted he was running out of energy. He thought it was all over. He says he's got a new tactic this year, psychologically and physiologically, that he's going to have all his strength throughout the season. So we'll see if he does, because he's going to need it. It's going to be a very close season.
Tony Rubens Barrichello, and on his Ferrari debut, people thought he might be overawed, he might be hit by that cricket bat that Eddie Irvine tells us Michael Schumacher wheels on Grand Prix weekends, but he's done pretty well. At one stage it looks like they might even get pole.
Don't forget, he's still in that honeymoon period. He still can't believe he's the first Brazilian driving for a Ferrari, and here he is enjoying it. Barrichello is normally so smooth. This is really right out of character for him to lose it, but he was slightly off the apex there, and he'd taken a bit too much curb coming in, and he would have been on for a fast lap there. This is the lad who at Interlagos, as a very young lad, threw his bike down. He saw Gilles Villeneuve driving a Ferrari, testing at Interlagos, and he vowed there and then, I will drive a Ferrari. One of the reasons why it's a sellout into Interlagos. This is Schumacher later on in the Ferrari, running wide when in the first two sections he'd been going very, very well indeed. He has overdriven a little bit during this weekend, which he will always do, but he will make the difference during a race. Because he's the best driver in the world, he can pull up that half a second or those 2/10 to McLaren. So we're in for a ding-dong race.
I'm sure we are. Let's just take a check on the grid, how things stand, just to refresh your memory there. And there we are. Very neat order at the top, 2 by 2 by 2. We haven't mentioned the Jordans, though, Tony. Those 5th and 6th, 2 in the top 6 after a pretty bad day yesterday as well.
Yeah, I mean, they are the stealth fighters. They're very, very strong indeed. On the first day, Heinz-Harald Frentzen ran 35 laps, no problem at all. Truly had some problems, but they are looking good to keep the 3rd place, and a few upsets as well. Although the engine, the Mugen Honda engine, is a little bit heavier, very, very powerful. Great chassis from Mike Gascoigne, the technical director as well. 2 brilliant drivers. They're going to be great.
Looking forward to it. Should be a terrific opener, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely terrific.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just refresh your memory about what is coming up in our coverage of the Australian Grand Prix, when you can see it and where. There we are then. We have a rerun of the qualifying session. That is this afternoon, and that kicks off at 2:20. And I feel absolutely convinced that all you Grand Prix night owls are going to be with us once again for our live coverage of the Australian Grand Prix, our build-up starting at 2:15. Tomorrow morning. There is a rerun for you at 2 o'clock on the Sunday afternoon of the Australian Grand Prix, and highlights later on in the evening at 11:45. And there we are. That is about it from us at Albert Park. We've all been totting it up and seeing exactly how hot it is. And in old money, they approached 125 degrees. And you know, the weather forecasts tell us it is going to be even hotter tomorrow. I know you will feel no sympathy whatsoever as you shiver around Britain. And I know as well that you're going to get up and join us live, because there's nothing like seeing the race live. We look forward to the pleasure of your company. In the meantime, from the whole of the ITV team here in Melbourne, goodbye.